With the addition of the Crimson Isle update, many new items were added to the game, and these items had something new called attributes. Attributes were a new system in Hypixel Skyblock that gave various stats and abilities to these new items, which oftentimes made them incredibly powerful. But with hundreds of different combinations, it can often be difficult to determine which attributes to use on which armor sets, weapons, or equipment pieces. So in this video, we're going to be going over the best attributes for all of these, as well as good alternatives if you can't afford the god rules. So let's get right into it. So before we begin, let's go over some basics. All items that have attributes for the most part will have two separate attributes. An item that has the two best attributes for said item is called a god rule. God rolls are incredibly expensive, but also incredibly powerful, and are usually the most coveted items in the game. So in the video, we're going to be going over different items, where I'll be first explaining their god roll, why it's the god roll, as well as good alternatives for those who can't afford the god roll for said item. Let us first begin with Crimson Armor. Crimson Armor is the best melee armor set in the game, and the best attributes for Crimson Armor is Magic Find Veteran. The reason for this is because Crimson Armor is mainly used for Slayers, and Slayers center around Combat Wisdom as well as Magic Find. So having these two together makes it an incredibly powerful attribute combination. However, God Roll Crimson Armor is exceedingly expensive, being well over 200 mil per piece. So if you can't afford that, good alternatives are things such as Veteran Vitality, which serves the same purpose as Veteran Magic Find. However, you don't get the Magic Find and instead get more Vitality, which is still a very good attribute to have, as it will help you heal more while fighting Slayer bosses. Another decent role to have on Crimson is Dominance Mana Pool, which is key to being able to skip Enderman Slayer bosses phases using the Midas Staff. Outside of that, any real combination with Veteran honestly works for Crimson Armor. Dominance Veteran, Life Regen Veteran, any of those is fine. Really, the most important attribute on Crimson Armor is Veteran. Moving on to Aurora Armor. Aurora Armor's best attribute is Mana Pool Mana Regen. This combination gives you insane damage, a bunch of mana, and very fast mana regeneration. It's incredibly powerful for Aurora and the best attribute. Obviously, Mana Pool Mana Regen is incredibly expensive, just like God Roll Crimson. So good alternatives are things such as Mana Regen Veteran or Mana Pool Veteran, as Veteran is still very good even for Aurora. Or other things such as Dominance Mana Pool, Dominance Mana Regen, honestly anything that has Mana Pool or Mana Regen. Breeze is also a good option, though it is usually inferior to Mana Pool and Mana Regen. The reason why Veteran is still good on Aurora Armor is because Aurora is often the main armor set used for Flares, which give a bunch of combat XP and can help you level Golden Dragon Pets faster or just give you more combat XP in general. And you also use Aurora if you want to do right-click Mage Enderman Slayer bosses, as well as Tarantula bosses. So it is really good to have that Veteran stat on your Aurora Armor. Moving on to Terra Armor, and that's where things get a bit more complicated. The technical god roll for Terra is Dominance Vitality, but with the recent shifts in the meta for Kudra, which is the main use of Terra Armor, a new attribute set called Lifeline Mana Pool has become the new meta due to the superior damage of Lifeline compared to Dominance, giving you superior mana drain for the Ferocious Mana enchant. But honestly, unless you're sweating Infernal Kudra, Dominance is just fine. You would just need Dominance and any other attribute. I would personally recommend Dominance Mana Pool, but anything like Dominance Life Regen, Dominance Vitality, Dominance Mana Regen, they all work just fine. So if you can't afford God Roll Terra, then you can go for those options. But most of these are fine, and if you want maximum damage, then Lifeline Mana Pool is the best attribute for Terra. And now I'm going to briefly touch on Hollow and Fervor Armor. These two armor sets are pretty much unused in the meta, so there's not really anything to go for them. But if you really wanted to use them, Fervor does really well with the Vitality attribute. Anything combined with Vitality should be fine. You can do like Fortitude Vitality, or you can do Life Regen Vitality. They all work just fine. And for Hollow Armor, you can actually go Mana Pool, Mana Regen as a cheaper option than Aurora Armor, and you only lose a little bit of intelligence compared to using Aurora Armor. So it is a good cheap budget version of Godroll Aurora, but I personally wouldn't recommend this since you can't sell back Kudra sets because they become soulbound once starred. So usually it's better to just get Aurora or just get something that isn't Godroll for Aurora, and it'll usually be better for the long run. And now I'm going to be going over the fishing armor sets, mainly just Thunder and Magma Lord. Do take note that I haven't been seriously fishing since like when I got fishing 50 like over a year ago, so some of my information isn't exactly accurate, but I did ask a lot of my friends who were into fishing, and this is what they've told me. For fishing armor sets, if you're using Thunder, you shouldn't really care about the attribute. It doesn't really matter, but once you get into Magma Lord, that's where attributes start mattering. And for Magma Lord armor, the best Godroll attributes are Blazing Fortune, Fishing Experience, with Fishing Experience being the more important one of the two. If you can't afford the Godroll, another good option that is also still expensive is Fishing Experience Mana Pool, which helps you kill the creatures and still gives you the Fishing Experience attribute. Otherwise though, if you can't afford that one as well, some other good options are anything with Fishing Experience or anything with Blazing Fortune, but usually Fishing Experience takes precedence. But that's everything for the fishing armors. If I made a mistake or if there's something you should wanted to clarify, but that's all for the armor sets. So now let's get into some main equipment pieces and their best attributes. Now let's go over the Vanquished equipment set, which is the best for Blaze Slayer and is usually just a good pick for Slayers in general. The Vanquish set's best attribute is Veteran Vitality. It's pretty cheap to get it, so honestly, everyone should just use that. There's no real alternative. Since Vanquished equipment pieces can't get the Magic Find attribute, Veteran Vitality is the best. If you were going to go for a more mana-based build, you could technically go like Veteran Mana Pool or something like that, but usually I would recommend for the long run just to get Veteran Vitality. It is the best for Blaze Slayer and it's just very good overall. The other very good equipment set is the Molten set. I don't have many Molten pieces right now, but the Molten set has a lot more nuance. Before the dungeon equipment change with you being able to put Master Stars on these pieces, Molten was the best for dungeons. So Dominant Speed was the best for that situation. However, with recent changes, a lot of Molten pieces have become obsolete, except for a couple, mainly the Molten Necklace being still used to this day. And the Molten set usually will just excel with still Dominant Speed, but if you are a mage, Dominance Mana Pool is also a very good option. However, for the most part, unless you're really endgame, I would recommend ignoring the Molten set and just going straight for full dungeon equipment. Obviously, you will lose a lot of speed in that, but as long as you put some tunings on speed or something like that, you should be fine. However, if you are doing high master mode like M7, then you need to start looking into optimizing your equipment set to be able to use it properly for that and still have good speed and good crit chance and good damage in general. But those are honestly the only two main equipment sets that we need to address. So now let's move on to weapons. The Crimson Isle added a wide variety of weapons, but for the most part they are either completely useless or are only used for their ability that isn't affected by the attribute. The only exception to this rule is the Fire Veil Wand. The Fire Veil Wand is actually affected by its attributes, and Elite Ignition is the god roll for that. Elite Ignition just gives you a lot more damage for the bosses and mini-bosses, and gives you a lot more fire damage, which is excellent. It's usually quite affordable, but if you can't afford it, then you can go for any combination of other combat-based attributes that contain either at least Elite or Ignition. But usually I would recommend getting the god roll of Elite Ignition for your Fire Veil Wand. Outside of that, however, most of the other weapons that are used for... Outside of that, however, most of the other weapons that have attributes don't really use their attributes. So I just have Elite Ignition on my Ragnarok axe, but it doesn't actually do anything. Usually you shouldn't really worry about attributes for anything outside of the Fire Veil wand. But overall, this is honestly all of the items I felt were relevant to the video. If I missed any, please make sure to let me know in the comment section below, and I may make a part 2 in the near future. However though, I thank you guys so much for watching this entire video. It's really amazing, I really appreciate it. I hope you guys found this useful in some way, shape, or form. And that's about it. I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll see you guys in the next one.